I can't. Okay.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us here. We know that you have busy schedules, busy days, so we're glad that you could take some time and spend it with us here. We're going to be talking through how banks and credit unions are thinking about the current tech landscape, some things around AI, how CRM, specifically HubSpot, fit into the middle of it. So with that said, ready to kick off the presentation here. And as you'll notice as well, we have a special guest from HubSpot as well, which we'll get to some introductions in a second here. But anyways, so topic for today, siloed banking is over, the CRM and AI playbook for banks and credit unions. So from a speaker standpoint, Bridget, if you would like to go first.
Yeah, so my name is Bridget Donaldson. I am a senior services consultant here at HubSpot. My role is basically to think through implementations throughout our various customers and what's going to be successful for their industry, for their use case. I spent 3 years in our onboarding team, so I have onboarded many credit unions and banks and work on many strategies for credit unions and banks now.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, we're really glad to have you. For the watchers here, Bridget's an absolute rock star at HubSpot. She handles some of the most complex and technical use cases out there, so she's a wealth of information. To quickly introduce myself, Josh Damagala, the sales director for the North America business unit here at Triario. I've been in sales and consulting for about 7-ish years at this point. Almost all of that has been in the HubSpot ecosystem. I used to work directly at HubSpot, and then I've been on the partner side ever since then. So with what we're going to be walking through today, this is what you're going to recognize straight from the webinar landing page that you probably had signed up from. So first topic is going to be the state of the industry, basically why things that we're all doing today probably won't work as well in the future and why we should make some changes there. If we know that we do need to change and the times are changing, well, how should we be doing things? What does the processes and the data model look like for there? I'll walk you through some specific examples that banks and credit unions are doing today within HubSpot, as well as the Triario data model for that. And then lastly, we want to hear your feedback and questions. So there'll be a Q&A section there. So to kick things off here, Bridget, I'll let you take the floor and do your thing.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. Okay, so one of the biggest issues that we find with credit unions and banks are that all of your teams are working on different sources of data. So this might sound familiar to you, where lending will see one thing, operations sees another, marketing sees something, service sees something else, or maybe nothing at all. So it's not due to the lack of effort. It's really that teams are trying to operate in an environment where member data, lending activity, service interactions, your customer onboarding, and marketing signals all kind of live in different places in siloed data. So when you don't have one unified member or customer record, handoff can get weaker, decisions take longer, and the customer experience really becomes inconsistent and disjointed. So it creates an operational lag. It's kind of a hidden operational lag where the teams are working hard, but they're working across these silos. A member might feel like they're dealing with one organization, but internally, all the data is fragmented across departments and system. So the impact of that can show up in several places. Very often we'll see where marketing will struggle to prove contribution to growth. Onboarding will take longer than it should, resulting in a less than ideal customer experience. Manual work is eating up your team's time and capacity, and compliance is often becoming reactive instead of systematic. So for me, that's kind of the starting point is that the system is fragmented, the data is siloed, and the customer experience is suffering for that. So once we agree that the real problem is that your data is siloed and that it's fragmented, really it becomes, how does a CRM help unify that data and unify your teams? So I'm ready for the next slide. There we go. Okay. So this is where I think reality really becomes tangible. So most banks and credit unions operate with not only just a couple of disjointed systems, or tools, but we're also having an entire disconnected ecosystem. So you're going to have your core banking platform, your loan origination tools, online banking, calling systems, website forms, your compliance tools, and then a CRM layered in somewhere on top. So too often, though, instead of becoming the connective system, the CRM becomes just one more data silo that's going to require more data entry, more manual reconciliation, and it's not really a true source of information. So again, we kind of covered it on the last slide, but that creates a lot of friction for every team. So we're toggling between systems. We are trying to piece together context. Reporting becomes difficult at best. Each platform's only telling part of the story, so trying to report on that as a whole is difficult. So even when your teams are doing great work, leadership doesn't always have visibility to see what's driving outcomes and the good work that your team is performing. So the issue isn't that your institution has the wrong people, it's that the people are being asked to work around architecture that was never designed to support a modern member journey. So again, our goal when we're looking at bringing in a CRM for a banking and credit union, it's not to replace these other systems, it's to create an operating layer that connects all of the systems.
This right is the website to the CRM. For most of the banks, credit unions out there, you all kind of offer the same services or products, but how you do it is different, right? The customer experience there. So when it comes to your website, right, speed to lead is very important. The experience that they'll get if they submitted a form to be contacted, having relevant information pulled in from there to actually reach them quickly for things that they actually want to know about. Because these things that start early on in the process set the tone if they're going to want to work with you or not. And they'll get a feel of how they're actually going to be treated as a client, which is really how you can help set yourself apart.
Okay, so we talked about the problems that we have, and now what are the outcomes we should be looking to achieve? So again, if the current state is too many silos, what are we aiming for? What is our goal? So it's going to start with a unified view of the customer. I'm sure you've all experienced it where you wish you could just click into one record and see a combination of all of your systems, your loan originating tools, all of the records related to that customer and see it in one unified view. So every team's working from that same real-time record, which is huge. You're not going to be chasing data. You're not going to have conflicting information, and your departments aren't going to be working from different sources of truth. All of your data will be combined into one source of truth, which is your CRM. Onboarding is another big unlock for an outcome that you will achieve. So when your workflows are automated from end to end, we're not talking about like small gains. These are going to be huge gains, especially when we're looking at compressing your onboarding timeline from weeks to days and creating a smoother experience for the institution and the member. We've all been part of processes that are bumpy and a bit disconnected as far as being a consumer or a member or customer. And this is just really going to streamline that process so that your customers are happy. The other area you're going to see a lot of outcomes is cost, really. So when you remove the manual process, you're going to gain time, which time is money. So your savings are going to compound quickly. Your teams will be spending less time on repetitive tasks and more time on things that are going to move the business forward. From a compliance standpoint, the shift is just as important. So instead of reacting to audit requests and scrambling to get all of the documentation in place, institutions can work towards a model that's continuous and it's structured, and you're going to be ready for audits. One of the areas I find the most exciting for the shift is marketing growth, because when your campaigns can finally be tied to those open accounts, those funded loans, revenue, your growth is going to not be guesswork, but it's going to be intentional. So for me, this is really about moving the conversation from problems to outcomes, not just what's broken today, but what's going to become possible when you streamline all of your systems into one source of truth as the operating layer. So the next question that we have is really, what does this look like? So I'm going to pass it back to you, Josh, to go through a couple of case studies and data models.
Yeah, appreciate it. So one, Santander Bank, they're a client of ours. They're a global entity, household name. Most of you, I would assume, probably do know them. So what they actually were struggling with up front were that they had that fragmented ecosystem that Bridget was talking about, which meant disconnected platforms across sales, customer service, marketing, for document generation. No centralized system that could really be a source of orchestration, meaning taking all the important data and actually doing something strategic for it, and then also having customer experience in mind. So what they really would need in this case is that CRM that could link their core banking system, their loan processes, and then their tickets or support management. So on top of that, we know that there's so many regulations, security things that we need to keep in mind, as well as compliance and as well as infrastructure validations, that they needed an expert in the space to really help usher them through this process. So ultimately, what happened is they needed a solution that had everything from a functionality and security and compliance standpoint that they needed. HubSpot's one of the few out there that was, and it ended up being implemented as their central CRM and operational platform. So it unified those departments and business lines that we were just talking about. It had a pretty robust data model with over 200 custom properties, because the data model for CRM implementation is only as good as how tailored it is to your unique processes. Banks and credit unions may do things similarly, but you all have your own flair or secret sauce to that, which we really want to capture that in processes of implementation like this. So ultimately, we did integrate this with their core as well. We had client and loan data synced between the two in real time. And we had a complete technical and security validation of all of these things to review processes along the way. So just a couple of highlights that we ended up seeing from this in the end is that there was over 35,000 monthly tickets managed for them, which is an extreme amount. So you want to make sure you have the right flow, you're getting the right information, and you can also jump on those quickly. There was also a 70% open rate on communications for critical financial documents, et cetera. And lastly, they had a full view of the customer because they could see any marketing or sales or service related data, but then anything that was important about their accounts, the loans they had, anything like that through the different systems, whether that be online banking, loan origination, straight from the core, into HubSpot in one place. So their customers really felt valued and heard by having a solution like this. So ultimately, and I will walk you through this document in more depth in a second here, but where do we actually start? Like, what does this data model actually look like? So first and foremost, where we see HubSpot playing the most role is from that marketing and sales standpoint. So it's in taking all of this data, preserving metadata so that we could use that for automations, outreach, reporting, all of that. But then ultimately, to Bridget's point, having it be at the center of that ecosystem and connecting your core banking, loan origination, online banking, not replacing that just working in tandem, letting everything do what it does well, but having the perfect mixture of that. Because really, we want to know who's a customer of ours, who could be a customer, why is somebody not, why are they, and everything we can do to help move the business forward from there. So to show what this actually looks like, and there's a lot here, so I'm just zoomed into specific points, but I'll go through each and every motion here. So the orange box, as you can tell, this is HubSpot. Any type of platform that you have is made up of what we call objects, which are basically data storage within the platforms. So in HubSpot, the core objects are going to be contacts, companies, deals, and tickets. It's a little bit jargony, and you can tweak the naming conventions of that to match what you need. But a contact is basically anybody you're doing business with, want to do business with. A company is an institution that they could be attached to. This deals would be the actual opportunities, whether that's getting them to open up a new account, having a loan that's in the application process. And then lastly, tickets would be any of those service related requests. HubSpot does also offer custom objects, which I'll show some key examples of here in a second, where we can make it a bit more customized to your needs. But ultimately, what this data architecture is meant to show is your current state, so your current processes, and then we would want to help you create the future state, where you're trying to go here. So it all starts with like, what are our contact or lead sources? A lot of the common ones we see specifically for what you all are doing, it's straight from the website, forms, paid ads from a marketing standpoint, and then more of referrals, people that are actually coming into the branches. But then there can be some others along the way too, whether that's imports, people that might be chatting in, one-to-one emails, calls, all of that. Some take advantage of enrichment tools to bring in new contacts that they think could be good for them, such as Clay or Zoom Info. And then ultimately, once we have those leads in, how do we want to automate them and get them into our sales funnel, if you will? One call out I do want to make here, where this isn't in every use case, but it does come up from time to time. Sometimes for marketing communications, it's important for institutions to be very tight with the compliance around that. So as far as archiving, making sure certain content is scanned so that certain wording or images aren't shown to customers, and then also stored from an auditing perspective. If that sounds like you and what you're doing from a marketing standpoint, you can have this connected to another tool through integration like Proofpoint that handles this. But with that said, if that doesn't sound like you, all those marketing channels you could just use directly through HubSpot as well. So what ends up happening once we have the folks in is some common deal pipelines we see here. It could be for specific loan types or business banking. What these gray boxes are the actual stages that would need to happen in that process to get it from brand new potential client to actual member of the bank or credit union. So for example, new opportunity, they submitted their application, underwriting, approved, funds released, all of that. This is just a template. There could be more stages to this, less, depending on what you do specifically. And that's part of the beauty of the HubSpot. You build it to be what you need it to. Now, getting to some of those custom objects that I was talking about here, ones that we see pretty commonly are financial accounts. So this is going to be coming in through integrations through either your data warehouse, which the core is feeding into. And so think of this like, what type of account is it? Is it banking, checking, CD, money marketing, the account number, when it was created, the status of it, all of that. Another big thing is going to be the household. So who is actually involved with all these different accounts? And then same things for loans, right? What type is it? Is it a home loan? Is it an auto loan? Like when's the origination date, the maturation date? When did they sign up for it? The value of it, all of it. What we do with all these different objects within HubSpot is all the information you would care about to use from a marketing, sales, or service standpoint, we can bring that into HubSpot. So to show you where that actually comes from is it all stems back to what you're using in your larger ecosystem here. So common core systems that we know are out there, right? Jack Henry, Fiserv, Oracle, all those different data points that live in there. You might have your online banking connected to this. You might have your loan origination systems. All of that then could be funneled directly into a data warehouse if you're using one. Think of Snowflake, where the information's transformed. And then what we would need to do is have a middleware that sits in between that and HubSpot, because think of HubSpot speaking English, and then the tools we're looking at here speaking Spanish. We need something to bridge the gap and make them understand each other. So typically what we see from a middleware perspective to do this data transformation here, this would be AWS or Azure. One last thing that I do want to show here too, because we've talked about it a little bit, would be those ticket pipelines. So you might be wondering, well, what could we use this for? Common examples we see is if somebody's having trouble logging into their account, or maybe they lost their credit card, they need it to be replaced, something like that. And you have all this information in HubSpot. So with that said, and back to the presentation here, now that we know what needs to be built, well, like, why does this actually matter? And Bridget had touched on this very well in the beginning. But really, what it is HubSpot, it's not going to replace everything you're doing today. It's going to augment it, help you have better visibility, be better operationally, and reach everybody in your audience better and more effectively, whether it's just to nurture them, maybe get new clients, or upsell and cross-sell them. So you can see we have all the different potential softwares you could be using for different things tied into HubSpot with HubSpot at the center here. So now that we know the basis of basically what and why, well, what are we actually going to get from this? What are the benefits here? So ultimately, it's going to be that centralized customer acquisition and marketing data. What's working, what's not, where are people at in their processes? How can we reach them to have them become more entwined with our business? Structured loan origination and deal management. Because everything's talking to the different systems we saw in the data model, no stone is left unturned, and everybody in every division will have the same view. We're going to have coordinated intake, service, and customer communication, the clear attribution from campaigns to loan products and revenue. Because if we're doing all that in HubSpot, we could see, hey, marketing did this, we got X amount of new opportunities from it, and this amount of revenue from that as well. And then ultimately that tracking through each stage of the process as well, which we'll see in a little bit more detail as well. So these are going to be 3 examples of what these processes would actually look like within HubSpot. So first and foremost, pipeline visibility across products. This is an example of a loan pipeline that we could have. Usually the people you would see within HubSpot in your bank or credit union working out of this piece, it could be your tellers, it could be the relationship managers, loan officers, retail bankers, all of that. So depending on what they're trying to sell from a product or service, they would have clear visibility into each stage. Where are things actually at? How much is this opportunity worth? What do I need to do task-wise to move it from one stage to the next? And this also ensures that nothing falls through the cracks. What I like about this is, like, this isn't theory. This isn't a generic demo portal. This is what you could expect those folks to actually be looking at with HubSpot. So moving on to the next example here, and also back to what Bridget was talking about. So for member onboarding, it's really critical for 2 reasons, right? And probably more than that. But what comes to mind for me is that, 1, it can be a very time-consuming process with a lot of moving parts that can slip through if we're not tight on the execution of that. But it's massive for the customer experience, because we don't want to go through the motions of getting somebody to sign up to become a member with us, and then they have a poor onboarding approach and end up wanting to go somewhere else after that. So what we're seeing on the left-hand side here is called a workflow, which in HubSpot terms, it's an automation path. So what the automations in HubSpot are basically executed on are what's called triggers. So a trigger could be an event that somebody does, like visiting a page on your website, submitting a specific form, or it could be a specific data point. So for example, maybe you know that somebody had an auto loan 2 years ago with you, but they're poking around on your website looking at home loans. You could have that be the trigger for one of these workflows to automatically fire off some nurturing sequences to maybe try to get them to book a call with you all, discuss this further. So the key here is to really, A, help with the customer experience, B, take some of that manual lift off the team, but then also make sure nothing falls through the cracks and that we're not chasing anything that we don't need to, so we can spend more time member and client facing versus on the back end here.
Josh, can I just add one more thing to that workflow
piece?
Please do. Another good component of the workflow is that you can also trigger surveys for your customers, whether it's an NPS survey or a custom survey, but you can trigger surveys to really gather that insights into how your customers are feeling, if they're satisfied, to really help nurture them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great call out, right? Because if we don't proactively do these things, we're probably not going to hear anything, because I think we've all experienced this, maybe personally or seen it. Unless prompted or having a good reason to, people just naturally aren't going to leave a good review or tell you things you're doing well. They're only likely to do that if something negative happens. So this is a way to get ahead of all of that as well, too.
Yeah, so, I remember seeing a stat real quick that was I always thought was so insightful, was that 90% of unhappy customers won't say anything, they just don't come back. So
Mhm.
really you want to be proactive in making sure you can uncover any of those detractors, so to speak, and really get them so that you can nurture them and they become happy customers.
Yeah, it's a significant percentage there.
Hmm.
And last but not least here is the sensitive data management. So these are the actual toggles that you can see within HubSpot because it is a fully compliant system for your needs here. So you can see a couple of them would be personal sensitive data. So these could be things like ethnicity, gender, age, all of that. But then there's also ones for financial data like account numbers, tax information, SSNs, anything like that. What I want to call out here is that while this does exist to give more flexibility, the key for what you actually want to do with HubSpot is not just feed data into it for the sake of doing it, but if we're going to put data into it, what do we actually want to do with it? That goes back to HubSpot being the orchestration layer, right? We can have it in there, but what's the value? What's the purpose? Are we using this to maybe have cross-sell, upsell opportunities, get people to open new accounts, take on new loans, understand who they are a bit better? So we want to be deliberate about the information that's coming in, but HubSpot has these controls too. So if I had to boil this down, ultimately think about it like, this is going to limit the risk because there's less data within HubSpot, but that's not going to take away from the capability that you have from it. And yeah, with that said, Bridget, I know you are the AI guru here, so I'll let you take this back as well.
Yeah, sure. So AI is one of the exciting new enhancements in life. But so we're going to talk about the AI layer to your foundation in HubSpot or your CRM. So when people hear AI, it can often feel intimidating and overwhelming. You might assume that AI means it has to be a massive high risk transformation strategy, but really in reality, we like to start with a low risk practical use case that builds on your current strong foundation and enhances it to really become a good force multiplier. So what that looks like with HubSpot is having AI assisted insights and customer intelligence so we can gather useful signals that are automated from either member and loan data. So leadership really can, and frontline teams have a more real-time picture of what's happening across the customer base. There's data enrichment that can happen. Just automating all of that with those AI-assisted insights. The second piece is AI service agents. That's another big one that is really helpful for banks, credit unions. So basically, this is where AI can start to assist your routine service interactions. So those forgotten passwords, those things that are a little bit repetitive. So it really is allowing your human team to take on those more complex, higher risk cases with the repetitive tasks being handled by an AI agent. When we implement an AI agent, we see a 40% faster resolution time. We see a 39% faster ticket as far as the ticket goes. We'll see more pipeline being captured because we're not missing out on that. No opportunities will be missed, and you're going to be able to increase the capacity of your headcount. So however you want to use the increased capacity is going to be something that is a great opportunity for you. We also have AI assisted analytics, which really reduces the burden of manual reporting and building out manual reports. So instead of always pulling reports by hand, teams can become more strategic and give guidance to the AI reporting tool that in human language, you can generate a report with the data that you want. And then my very favorite AI tool currently is AEO. So that stands for Answer Engine Optimization. So the buyer journey in the world is evolving. So organic traffic to websites is down 27% year over year, but buyers are still searching. So the difference is that buyers are now using AI to consider all of their options and do some research before reaching out to a vendor or a bank or a credit union. So think about this. If I'm in the market for a new car loan, I don't have to be located close to the lender, so I can go anywhere I want. So I Google competitive loan rates. I'm now served up with that AI summary displaying all of the most competitive rates. Sure, I could narrow it down to my region if I wanted to, but I don't necessarily have to. But as I'm sure most of us have, when we are given these search results, I'll either go to another tab and type in the bank directly, or I'll keep searching. So as this evolves, 60% of all internet searches are ending without any clicks. So this is going to result in losing customer deals and opportunities, loans that you didn't even know you had a chance at. So it really is going to increase those opportunities for you. The other thing is that it will show up as a lower lead gen in many companies that we've seen. So AEO is really going to help track that visibility and understand what sources and citations are influencing those answer engines when people are searching. So HubSpot's tool goes in there and it will give you best practices. It'll rank your current AEO strategy and allow you to tailor it and send your information out to all the sources that are pulling for those AI answers. So it actually really increases your inclusion in the AI answers, which is going to result in your higher lead gen or meeting those lead gen KPIs that you have. It also results in closing a deal or a customer 3 times faster than organic traffic because those people are very intentional about coming to your site and reaching out to you. So your customer's already educated on the products, on your loan offerings, on your accounts, things like that. So it really helps strategize, bringing in that more educated buyer that has a higher intent of closing. So it's not really about, all of these AI tools in a nutshell isn't just about AI inside the business, but it's also making sure that your business is discoverable in answer engines, and especially with this AI first buyer journey. So it's something that I get very excited about because, there are all these customers out there that you don't even know you could have because they're never making it to their site. But if you're showing up in the answer engines when you're in the AI answers, then you're going to have a chance at that business, and it's going to be a more meaningful chance because those buyers are more intentional. So now I will pass it back to you, Josh, for talking about Triario.
Yeah, thanks, Bridget. And really great take on the AI capabilities here. One thing I would say to that is it's been the talk of the town for the last couple of years. It's very front and center with HubSpot. There's a lot you can do. Where we see it is do a kind of a crawl, walk, and run approach based on where you're at and where you might want to do things with it. But anyways, to help conclude here, so as you can tell, this is a space that we do specialize in. We've been around for 16 years. Banks, credit unions, clientele for a significant portion of that. We've also been a HubSpot shop that whole time too. So the entire evolution as a product along there. We've helped of all sizes institutions to do this, and we'd be happy to talk to you about this as well. I think we'll have a QR code that's going to be popping up here shortly, which if you're interested in booking a call with us to discuss any of these things, please feel free to do it through that code as well. We'd love to talk to you about it no matter where you're at in your processes here. So anyways, where that takes us here now is going to be, last but not least, our Q&A section where Bridget and I will be tag teaming them as they come in here. Question 1, for a credit union that has never used a CRM before and is starting from scratch, what's the single most important first step here? Bridget, you want to take that one?
Yeah, definitely the single most important first step is to define the future state. So we don't want to jump in and just start configuring. We need to plan that out with a strategy session. So when you're implementing HubSpot, if you're implementing on your own or using a partner like Triario, you're going to have strategy sessions where you're really mapping out what that success looks like. So you'll take your current state and map out all of the issues that there are now, and then we're going to move you to future state. So that's going to look like how we want member acquisition to flow, how we want onboarding, handoffs, follow-up work. And then we're going to build the CRM to support that process. We don't want to jump straight into like fields and pipelines and imports because that creates a messy environment. We want to be very strategic in building that orchestration layer to work with all of your systems. So from services perspective, we usually recommend starting with an MVP. That gives your team somewhere to start with a goal point. While we're in MVP, we typically will launch either a small workflow or a small campaign. We learn what we did successfully during that time, and then we will iterate and optimize on that. So that MVP is really going to prove the model that we want to achieve, and then we can optimize from there.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there, Bridget. And I think one of the key takeaways, which you were talking about there too, is the closer we can get the processes aligned to the data model, what it also helps with is going to be adoption, because we know it's probably going to be new to a lot of folks on your teams here. But the more it looks like what they're already doing, it seems familiar to them. And because of that, they're more likely to take to the processes there, because you could have the best tool in the world. You could also have the best implementation of it in the world. But if nobody uses it, ultimately, you're not going to get any value from it. Question two, we have member data across our core banking system, loan origination system, and marketing platform. Where do you even begin when everything is that fragmented?
So that's a really good question, and it really just ties into that orchestration layer and making sure we plan out the strategy ahead of time before we actually start bringing things in. So we want to make sure that we're going to define the operating model, what teams need to see what handoffs need to happen, what data is visible across your different departments. So you're going to have your lending, your operations, your marketing, your service. So you really are building that CRM around that future state that I really just talked to. So we want to make sure that the core records and the life cycles are handled first. We're going to have a process for lead intake for that member record. So again, the goal is not replacing the core systems. The goal is to create that operating layer in HubSpot that gives your team the view that they need at each stage of the member journey. So again, it's data process model, not the integrations. Tactically, it's about the strategy and starting there and then building out from there.
Question number three, we're subject to strict regulatory requirements around data residency and audit trails. How does HubSpot handle compliance in a banking environment? I can take this one because it ties into that one of the last points I was talking about. So the two main ways is one is going to be that sensitive data toggle that we were talking about, right? So it could be for financial information, could also be for that personal information as well too. There are also some features and functionality HubSpot has around data residency, where you could choose where your data lives out of from a server standpoint. There's like certain jurisdiction that you need to fall into from there. But what I would also want to double down on here is it really comes back to the less data, the less risk, stuff that's really deliberate to be there and important for sales, marketing, and service to do their jobs, right? So think of things like the product types that they have, of like the next best thing that they could be buying based on what they're already doing. Are they showing intent signals for other maybe types of loans? Anything of like when they first signed up, that's the stuff that you're really going to want in HubSpot. So while yes, there are definitely guardrails and compliance built into HubSpot, we just want to be sure about everything we have in there and why to reduce that risk as much as possible. Question four, we already use Fiserv as our core banking platform. How complex is the integration with HubSpot, and does it typically require a middleware layer? So I can take this one too, because I already alluded to some of this as well. So you're mostly thinking about this in the right way. So let me kind of tackle this one piece at a time here. So how complex is an integration with HubSpot? That can be a little bit tough to answer, because really what it comes down to is the use cases that you want, which are comprised of the triggers. So basically what happens in one system to start passing information, the directionality that you want it to go. So just the HubSpot, bi-directional, something else, and then the targeted outcome that you would also want from that. So to kind of pull that all together, right? Like let's say a new loan is being processed within your loan origination system. that goes through your data warehouse, that acts as the trigger, that would then go be mirrored as a record within HubSpot, filling in all the appropriate information and maybe populating some data points into that loan custom object as well too. What I would caution against here though is that I would say almost never do we integrate directly HubSpot into core platforms, because from an IT perspective and security, it's just a no-go and a huge risk, because we don't want anything to potentially break within the core system, because it's the source of truth for everything. And there's just a lot of security and compliance around it. So like I said, we typically would do in this case is the core would feed into a data warehouse. Then we build that middleware between the data warehouse and HubSpot, which would be like your AWS or Azure server, something along those lines there. And one other thing I do want to say to that point too is, if your loan origination systems, online banking aren't all connected to the core in some way, then you'd have multiple data sources that you would all need individual integrations with HubSpot for. So basically having that centralized into all one location, which would be the data warehouse, just makes things a lot more easier, has all of that different data, and can have it structured the way that we need it to. Question number 5, how do you measure the ROI of a CRM implementation in a financial institution? What metrics should organizations be tracking during the first 90 days? So I touched on this a little bit during the presentation, so I'm happy to take this one too, Bridget. This really comes down to, what are you trying to solve for and why? And why are these things worth solving for? So kind of think of that like your current state versus the ideal future state. So maybe you're looking at this because you don't have attribution for marketing, for bringing in new members. Maybe cross-selling and upselling, you don't really have good visibility into all of that. So once you actually know what you're trying to solve for, you should define goals of what you want around that, right? So is it extra touch points? Is it more conversations? Is it actually more revenue generated for the business? And just kind of reverse engineer it from the problems you're trying to solve from there. Some of the key metrics that we see off the bat will be those cross-selling and upselling of different products or service lines. It'll also be new account openings. And then the most important one, which I probably sound like a broken record at this point, but it's the adoption. Like, is our team actually using this? And so those would, I would say, be like 3 good metrics to keep in mind, but it's going to be specific to you and what you're trying to accomplish in this project. And question number 6, how would you help us adopt something like HubSpot when most of our team works off spreadsheets, or in some cases, Post-it notes and other handwritten sources? Bridget, I've been talking for a while. I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, and actually this flows very well into this question from the statement you made previously. Like, adoption is a huge success metric when you're implementing a CRM operational layer. So we all know humans don't necessarily love change. It's very hard to get people to change. So this is something we take very seriously during the implementation process of a CRM. So what that looks like is we're going to have a strong change management process. We're going to do phased rollouts. We're going to have that practical MVP that I was talking about as one of the initial things that you're doing. So the adoption plan is going to make the new process better than the old process, not just more controlled. So it typically will start with that narrow use case or MVP, giving times to follow the simple workflow and really getting them value quickly. So we want to make their lives easier. So that is our goal during the MVP process. The other adoption motions that we have are train the trainer approaches. We'll have those pilot groups, those MVP rollouts. We'll have power users, champions, and then we iterate on all MVPs. So we're going to always be in an optimization phase throughout your entire usage, because we need to keep optimizing and evolving. So it really gives the institution the ability to build that confidence, create those internal champions that you need, and to improve the process before we roll it out broadly. One of the things, like obviously with humans, being a little bit more averse to change by nature, is that we need to make sure this process makes it better for them. So with all of the disconnected systems, as they're seeing their unified view of the customer, they're seeing how easy it is to work in there. They're going to become internal champions, which is really going to help the broader team adopt and scale. One of the plus sides of HubSpot that is really good is that we have a great user experience. One of my favorite things about it is it's fun to use. So once they get in there and see that, that's going to kind of just keep the momentum going. But we also want to make sure that we're doing it with a process and we're supplying materials and enablement and really giving them a strong confidence in the system.
Awesome. Well, I think that was the last question that we had here, and that was a good amount, and we've been talking for a while. We really hope this is helpful. And yeah, like we said, we'll have that QR code to where if you want to talk about this further, we're absolutely here to do that, whether it's from the HubSpot side, Triario side, joined, all of that sounds good to us. Bridget, once again, thanks a lot for joining us. This was awesome, and you absolutely crushed it.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it and value your partnership.
Yep, likewise. All right, well, everybody, thank you also for tuning in as well, and we will see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye.